21 old messages. The memory is full. Please erase your messages. Message 1.
This is the first testing message on these Motorola Digitan cordless telephones. This is on talk mode. I'm going to leave the studio and pass through the room to the other side of the area here so that we can check the range and make sure the range is what it should be. So I'm as far away as I can get now. If it's still clear, then the range is correct. Or good anyways, decent enough for use in the house. Okay. Now I'm switching to speaker. And I'm speaking.
Message 2.
This is the second part of the first testing message because the first one got cut off because the memory was full. It's on talk now, and I'm going to switch over to speakerphone now. Okay, it's on the speakerphone. This may be a little bit repetitive compared to the previous message, but I just don't remember where it cut off. Okay, so I'm speaking about 6 inches in front of the telephone, and I put it down on the table. It probably doesn't get any advantage from sitting down on the table because of the way the handset is designed. It's not sitting, and the microphone isn't against the ground. It's kind of just pointing up. Now I'm moving away from the telephone, about 2 feet away from the telephone now, and it seems like it's still recording. So I'm moving to about 3 feet away from the telephone.
Message 3.
This is the second handset on talk. Now it's on the speakerphone. The other phone seemed to be cut up until about 3 feet away, and then it stopped recording when I got to about 4 feet away. This message I will terminate by hanging it up into the cradle. Just took it off speakerphone, now it's back to talk. And this is not hanging up correctly because the contacts are kind of dirty, so I'll switch it to a different space and hang it up in that one.
Message 4.
Goose! Over and out.
Message 5.
I didn't hear this on the amplifier, but I'm hearing it now. This has quite a bit of a hum to it. Very loud hum, in fact.
Message 6.
Correctly?
Message 7.
This is the test of the AT&T 5.8 gigahertz Digitan on talk. Exiting the studio now, and I'm going to walk across the room to see how good the range is. I'm not sure if this is a dual band phone or not. We can take a look in that nice paper manual to confirm. I'm as far away as I can get now, so if it just clipped out at all there, then the range, I wouldn't be too surprised if it did. Some 5.8s don't make it across the room here. Okay, I'm entering back into the studio now. I'm going to close this stinking squeaky door, and I'm going to switch this on speakerphone. Okay, that was the mute, not speakerphone. Now it's on speakerphone, and I'm speaking at about the same distance and volume as it was before. Now I'm going to set the phone down to the table. So now it's sitting on the table, and I'm speaking about a foot or foot and a half away from it. And I'm going to progressively move further away from the telephone. Okay, so now I'm about 2 feet away from the telephone. And from my experience, these phones had a pretty good pickup, so I suspect this will sound just fine. I'm still getting further away. Now I'm about 3 to 4 feet away. And at this point, this is maybe 5 feet away. This is probably further than it would ever be used in a typical use case. And it's still recording, so as I suspect, I think the pickup will be just fine. So I'm going to hang this up with the buttons.
Message 8.
This time I will hang up into the cradle.
Message 9.
This is a test from the AT&T 1810 telephone. The answering machine is kind of crazy, but I still like the phone itself for the talking on feature.
Message 10.
This is a test of the Uniden Extendaphone 25 channel Ultra Clear Plus cordless phone. This is an analog 46 to 49 megahertz, and these I found that they worked pretty well. You know, they had a little bit of noise here and there as you're hearing, but for the most part, they were pretty clear. And I'm almost all the way across the room. Right now, I am all the way across the room, as far as I can get, and it's still perfectly clear. So, these are pretty decent phones. One I had, I used it for many, many years, and it was always very reliable, and it still worked perfectly fine. Okay, so now I'm back in the studio. I'll change the channel a couple times, and you'll be able to hear what that sounds like if the testing answering machine doesn't cut it off. Okay, I just changed the channel. I'll change it one more time. Okay, I'm done changing channels. Now I'm going to hang it up.
Message 11.
And this time I'm going to hang up into the base.
Message 12.
Goose, 1, 2, 3. This is a test from the base corded phone handset. I wish this had the audio tone control to it because the handset has kind of a high tone to it. I'd like to tone it down a bit. Over and out.
Message 13.
This is a test from the base speakerphone. I just picked it up off the table and I'm speaking directly into it on the bottom. And now I'll set it back down. I'm going to grab that piece of cardboard that I always use. Always, but often use in the videos. I'm going to put the phone on there. Okay. So now it's on the piece of cardboard, and I did that because I want to make sure that the carpet doesn't muffle the sound. Just for comparative purposes, I'm going to take the cardboard away. Okay, now it's sitting directly on the carpet. I don't know if that makes any difference or not. I tend to think it would make a difference. I just put the cardboard back, and we'll finish this test with the cardboard present. Right now, I'm speaking about a foot away from the telephone, right over it. I'm going to start moving back now. I'm about 2 feet away from the telephone. I'm going to go back a little bit further. Now we're at about 3 feet away from the telephone. And this is probably further than it would ever be used in a real-world use case, you know, if you were sitting at a desk or something working on a phone. Okay, now, oops, almost fell. Now I'm about 4 feet away from the telephone, and I'm not going to go any further. Now we'll conclude the base speakerphone test. Over and out.
Message 14.
This is the handset on talk. Going to exit the studio and traverse across the room to make sure the reception is clear on the other side. About halfway there. The range on these phones is pretty good, so it should cover all the way over to here with no problems at all. Okay, now I'm as far as I can go, so if it's still clear, then that's working as I'd expect it to. Now I will switch the handset to the speakerphone. Now it's on the speakerphone, and I'm talking at about the same distance and volume as I was before. Now I will come back to the studio area. I'm going to use the cardboard again, just out of curiosity. I'm going to put the phone down first on the carpet. Okay, so now I'm speaking right over the telephone, and it's standing up on the carpet. I just added the cardboard, and, you know, with the exception of a half-inch margin of error, I'm speaking at the same volume and distance over the telephone. Does this alter the reception at all? Okay, so now I'm about 1.5 feet away from the phone. I think this is the pretty typical use case where you'd sit the phone on the table and use it on a speakerphone. I'm going to start moving away from the phone now. And I have less stuff in here. It'll be easier to do this test. Now I'm about 2 feet away from the telephone, still speaking at a pretty moderate volume. And I'm about 3 feet away from the telephone. And now I'm at the 4-foot mark. And this is as far as I'm going to test it. I suspect it's still working fine. To pick up on these telephones, was quite good. I'm going to hang it up now using the button, the end button.
Message 15.
This time I'm going to hang up by putting it back into the cradle.
Message 16.
This is testing message number 1 from the handset. I'm not too fond of this handset. It sounds kind of muffled. It feels very cheap, hollow, plasticky, and it's way too small. Goodbye.
Message 17.
This is the second testing message. This is from the speakerphone, and right now I'm speaking right over the phone, about 6 inches away from it. And I start going further away. I'm about 1.5 feet from the telephone. This is probably right around that real-world typical use case distance. Start going back a little bit further. Now about maybe 3 feet from the phone. It's recording, so the pickup must be acceptable. Whoops, we're ready. About 4 feet away, almost bowing.
Message 18.
This is handset number 1 on talk. It's probably working correctly, but I'll check it anyways. Going to leave the studio and traverse across the room. I'm about halfway there, and we're almost at the end. Okay, now I'm as far away as I can go, so if it was still clear just then, it is working correctly. I have found the range in these to be a little bit less than some of the more recent phones, like the 1580, for instance. So it's possible that it may have clipped out a little bit towards the end there. Okay, I'm back in the studio now. I'm going to put it on speakerphone. Okay, it's on speakerphone. I'm speaking about the same distance and volume away from it as I was before. Now I'm going to set it down on the table. Okay, now it's on the table, and I'm speaking about 1 foot away from it, directly above it, or a little bit in front, as if it was sitting on a table and I was, working at a computer or something near the telephone. Now I'm going to start moving away from the telephone, about 2 feet away from the telephone now, and I suspect the pickup is still perfect. Now I'm about 3 feet away from the telephone. Looks like the testing answering machine is still recording, and I'll move to about 4 feet away from the telephone, and I suspect it probably is still working just fine. I will go ahead and hang this up with the buttons. I'll put it off speaker first. Okay, now it's on talk, and I'm going to hang up.
Message 19.
This time I will hang up into the base.
Message 20.
This is handset number 2 on talk, and this is handset number 2 on speakerphone. Gonna hang up into the cradle.
Message 21.
Go! This is the base speakerphone. I'm speaking directly into the microphone. Okay, now it's on the table, and I'm speaking a few inches away from it into the base unit. Now I'm about 1.5 feet away from the base unit. This is kind of at the typical use case range. So if it's working correctly right now, then I would say this is a good speakerphone. I'm going to start moving away from the telephone now. I'm about 2 or 3 feet away from the telephone. And probably further. Back a little bit further, about 4 feet away from the telephone. So I'm not sure if it picked up there or not. It's still recording, so maybe it did. I'm going to take the handset out of the base, and we'll see if it switches over to the handset. It did switch over to the handset, so here's a volume comparison of the handset on talk. Now we're back on speakerphone, and I'm going to go ahead and hang it up now.
End of messages.